Good morning. This is Pastor Jeff. The sermon title for today is When the Test Lands on the Desk. The sermon text is Matthew 14:22 through 33. And today is August 9th, 2026, which is the 11th Sunday after Pentecost. And the sermon location for this is my office. It's going to be preached at First Lutheran, Freeport, Illinois, here in about an hour and a half. There are a few sentences that can drain the joy from a classroom faster than a teacher saying, "Clear your desk, it's time for a test." Suddenly, people will begin bargaining with God. Someone remembers the chapter that they forgot to study. Someone else starts staring at the ceiling, hoping the answers will be written somewhere up in those light fixtures. And the one person who smiles and says, "Oh, I love tests," quickly loses friendship of everyone else in the room. Tests have a way of revealing things. They reveal what we remembered and what we skipped. They reveal what we thought we understood, but did not. And sometimes they show that we know more than we realized. Other times they expose that we were not nearly as prepared as we imagined. So in today's gospel, the disciples are about to face a test. Matthew tells us immediately, after Jesus fed more than 5,000 people, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side. Made sounds rather gentle, almost as if Jesus offered them a pleasant evening cruise and they willingly climbed aboard. But the Greek word, it is much stronger. Jesus compelled them. He insisted. He put them into the boat and sent them across the water. We might picture Jesus placing the disciples into the boat the way a teacher places a test on the desk. They did not ask for it. They may not have felt ready for it, but the test was there, and they were going to take it. They had been learning from Jesus for quite some time. They have heard the Sermon on the Mountain. They had watched Jesus heal the sick, welcome those who have been pushed aside, confront forces that diminished life, and proclaim that God's kingdom was drawing near. Just hours earlier, the disciples had participated in the feeding of thousands of hungry people. They had watched 5 loaves and 2 fishes become enough. They had not merely observed the miracle from a distance. The bread that they passed through with their own hands. They had heard the lessons. They had watched the demonstrations. Now came the test. Jesus sent the disciples across the sea while he dismissed the crowds, and he went up to the mountain alone to pray. By evening, the boat was far from the land, and the wind was against them. Matthew tells us that the boat was battered by the waves. But even battered may be too gentle. The word that Matthew uses can also mean tormented. The boat was being tormented by the sea. And this was not simply an uncomfortable ride. The waves were crashing. The winds were howling, and the disciples had been struggling for hours. Many of them were experienced fishermen. They knew boats. They knew water. They knew what to do when a storm appeared. But every skill that they possessed was failing them. Their arms were exhausted. Their strategies were spent. And their experience was no longer to carry them through. And that is often what makes a test a test. It takes us beyond the place where our usual answers work. We know what to do when the problem fits our experience. We know what to say when grief follows the pattern that we expect. We know how to function when the family, the church, the community, or even our own bodies behave the way they always have. But then the wind changes. A diagnosis comes. A relationship is fractured. The financial numbers, they no longer add up. The future we expected begins to disappear beneath the waves. And suddenly, the answers that worked yesterday, they don't seem to work today. The test lands on the desk. And we do not remember studying for this one. We should be careful, however, about suggesting that every storm is a test deliberately sent by God, because I do not believe that God causes cancer, violence, tragedy, or heartbreak because God decided that someone needed a spiritual examination. Too many grieving people have been wounded by someone telling them that God sent their suffering to make them stronger or to teach a lesson. Storms happen because we live in a world that is beautiful, broken, and unfinished. God may not author every storm, but God does meet us within them. And whether we choose the storm or not, it can reveal what we trust when our strength runs out. Sometime between 3 and 6 in the morning, during what was called the fourth watch of the night, Jesus came towards the disciple, walking on the sea. This was the darkest and the most exhausting stretch of the night. The disciples had been fighting the wind for hours. Their bodies were tired, their eyes were strained, and their fear had been working overtime. When they saw Jesus, they didn't recognize him. They thought he was a ghost, and they cried out in fear. And that may be one of the things that the test reveals. Sometimes fear distorts our vision so deeply that we cannot recognize grace when grace is walking towards us. Jesus was coming to help them, but they imagined that he was one more thing that might destroy them. Then Jesus spoke, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." A more literal translation would be, "Take heart, I am. Do not be afraid." Jesus was not merely calling across the waves, "Relax, everyone, it's me." He was speaking the divine name, I am. That name God spoke to Moses from the burning bush. The name of the God who made a path through the sea, who rules the raging waters, and who brings life out of chaos. The disciples had reached the limit of what they could do, and Jesus did not give them a new rowing technique. Jesus gave them himself. Take heart, I am. Do not be afraid. Then Peter, because Peter is Peter, decided that the test needed an extra credit question. He called out, "Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water." Jesus said, "Come." And Peter stepped out of the boat. For a few moments, he walked towards Jesus. But then Peter, noticed the strength of the wind. Fear took hold of him, and he began to sink. This story is often preached as though Peter's problem was simply that he took his eyes off of Jesus. Keep your eyes on Jesus, we are told, and you will stay above water. There may be some truth in remaining focused on Christ, but I'm not convinced that is the deepest lesson this story offers. The lesson is not that faithful people never sink. The lesson is not that if Peter had concentrated harder, prayed better, or possessed stronger faith, he would have remained above every wave. The lesson is not try harder. Peter's most faithful moment may not have been when he stepped out onto the water. His most faithful moment may have come when the water reached his neck and he finally understood that he could not save himself. Peter cried out, "Lord, save me." It was not a polished prayer. There was no carefully constructed theology, no bargaining, and no promise that he would do better next time. There was simply 3 desperate and honest words. Lord, save me. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. Peter did not pass the test by walking on water. Peter passed through the test by discovering whose hand would hold him when he could no longer hold himself. And that may be the lesson that lives. Many of the deepest lessons we carry were not learned when life was calm and everything was going well. We have learned them in hospital rooms and beside graves. We learned them when our plans collapsed, when relationships changed, or when we finally admitted that we could not fix everything, carry everyone, and control what came next. We learned them during that 4th watch, when the night had stretched too long and our own resources were gone. Those moments taught us prayers that may not sound impressive, but they are honest. Lord, help me. Lord, hold us. Lord, save me. When Jesus and Peter climbed into the boat, the wind ceased. Then the disciples worshiped Jesus and said, "Truly, you are the Son of God." This is the first time in Matthew's Gospel that the disciples make that confession together. They had watched Jesus heal people. They had heard him teach. They had participated in miracles and carried baskets of leftover bread. Yet, this confession was born in a battered boat after a long night of struggle. And the test revealed something. It revealed their limitations, their fear, and Peter's impulsiveness. Most importantly, however, it revealed Jesus. The test was never ultimately about whether the disciples were strong enough to defeat the storm. It was about whether they would recognize the one who came to them within it. And that matters for us because we spend a great deal of time trying to pass life's test by proving that we are strong enough. We try to hold the family together. We try to rescue the church. And we try to solve the future. We grow harder, work longer, and pretend that our arms are not tired. But faith is not pretending that the wind is calm. Faith is not insisting that we remain in control. Sometimes faith is simply naming the truth. The storm is real. I am tired. I'm beginning to sink. Lord, save me. And the good news of the story is not that faithful people will never face storms. The good news is that Jesus comes walking toward exhausted people in battered boats. Jesus comes when the wind is against us. Jesus comes during that fourth watch when the night seems unwilling to end. And Jesus comes when the fear has clouded our vision and we cannot quite recognize him. Jesus comes, stretches out his hand, and catches sinking disciples. The test may reveal that we do not have every answer. It may reveal that our strength has limits. It may reveal that some of the things we once trusted cannot carry us any further. But the test also reveals this: we are not alone on the water. The great I am is still coming towards us. The hand of Jesus is still reaching. And when every other answer has been washed away, the prayer that remains is enough. Lord, save me. Amen.